Today we uncover the shocking truth about Aldi. For millions of people, it has become the supermarket that feels practical, affordable, and easier to trust than the others. It is the place people go when they are tired, watching the budget, and just want to get the week sorted without all the usual supermarket games. And that is exactly why this matters. Because over the last year, Aldi kept turning up in Food Standards Agency alerts over undeclared milk, undeclared egg, undeclared wheat or gluten, possible peanuts, and even products recalled over possible pieces of plastic. These were not obscure items hidden away in some specialist aisle. They were ordinary foods people buy without a second thought. Potatoes, steaks, custard tarts, chocolate, ice cream, party food, the kinds of things that disappear into a normal trolley and a normal week. That is what makes this worse. Aldi does not just save people money, it lowers their guard. The whole place feels like somebody has already filtered out the nonsense for you. But once a supermarket earns that kind of automatic trust before the product itself has earned it, the real danger is no longer just what is on the shelf. It is the habit built around it. So, we have gone through the recall pattern behind Aldi's recent alerts. And by the end of this video, you will see exactly why Aldi in 2026 should not be treated like the no-risk autopilot shop anymore. But before we get into it, hit that hype button right now. Every hype helps push this video further, helps more shoppers see what is really going on, and helps put pressure on the companies that keep expecting people not to notice. So hype the video, share it with somebody who still thinks Aldi is the harmless option, and let's get into it. The shop people treat like the sensible option. Aldi earns trust faster than most supermarkets because it does not look like it is trying so hard. You walk in and the place feels stripped back. Fewer distractions, fewer choices, less of that feeling that every shelf has been designed to squeeze one more pound out of you. For a lot of people, that feels like relief. The shop looks practical, so the products start borrowing that same practical feeling. That is where the problem begins. People are not only saving money in Aldi, they are also relaxing earlier than they should. A freezer item feels fine because the whole place feels blunt and no nonsense. An own-label dessert feels fine because nothing around it looks overly polished or manipulative. A side dish feels safe because the environment quietly suggests that somebody has already done the filtering for you. The store earns calm before the packet in your hand has earned trust. And the uncomfortable part is that the low price story is real. Aldi usually is cheaper. That is what makes this harder to shrug off. The issue is not that people are being fooled about the price. It is that the price advantage helps the whole store feel more honest than the products themselves have actually proved they are. The shop's image is doing too much of the work. That is why the alerts matter more here than they would in a place people already distrust. In Aldi, ordinary recalls hit differently because shoppers were never approaching those ordinary products with much suspicion to begin with. And once you strip the mood away and look only at the actual notices, the pattern starts to feel a lot less accidental. The recall pattern that changes the whole mood. Put the trolley feeling to one side for a moment and just look at the facts. Over the course of last year, Aldi kept appearing in Food Standards Agency notices tied to undeclared allergens across ordinary products. Baby potatoes with herbs and butter were recalled over undeclared milk. Thin-cut beef steaks were recalled over undeclared milk caused by a packaging error. Custard tarts were recalled because egg, milk, and wheat or gluten were not properly declared. A dairy-fine chocolate product was pulled because it may contain peanuts. There was also an ice cream recall over undeclared wheat or gluten, and a Christmas party food item recalled over undeclared egg. That is not a small thing. One recall can happen anywhere. One supplier can make a mess. One packaging run can go wrong. Most people can live with that idea. Modern food retail is complicated and nobody sensible expects perfection every second. But once the same broad kind of failure keeps appearing across different product types, the feeling changes. It stops sounding like one ugly little accident and starts sounding like something weaker underneath the surface than customers had assumed. The key word there is broad. This was not all one category. It was not one line of premium ready meals or one odd imported item few people touch. The warnings spread across side dishes, meat, bakery, confectionery, desserts and seasonal food. That is what makes the pattern harder to dismiss. It reaches into the ordinary trolley, not the unusual one. It reaches the sort of food people throw in while thinking about something else. There was also a wider industry report on 2,025 product recalls built from Food Standards Agency alerts, and Aldi and Lidl came out on top. That does not automatically prove one chain is uniquely sloppy. A business that finds and removes more problems can look worse on paper than one that misses them. That point is fair and it matters. But fairness to the retailer is not the same thing as reassurance for the shopper. From the customer's point of view, the packet still has to be right. The label still has to do the basic job the label is there to do. And this is basic. If a product contains milk, say milk. If egg is there, say egg. If wheat or gluten is there, say it. If there is a peanut risk, do not make people guess. Nobody is asking for gourmet brilliance here. Nobody is demanding luxury standards from a discount supermarket. This is the floor. This is the minimum level of clarity a customer should be able to expect from a product they are picking up in a hurry. That is why Aldi in 2026 should not be treated like the low-attention shop anymore. Last year gave people a reason to slow down. Not because every shelf is dangerous, not because every product is suspect, because a place that felt almost too sensible to doubt turned out to be appearing in exactly the kind of alerts most people assume belong somewhere else. It is also worth noticing how easy it would be to miss the pattern if you were not paying attention to recall notices at all. One alert comes and goes, another appears months later. Another sits in a category you do not usually buy. Another turns up near Christmas when everybody is already overloaded. Most shoppers never see a neat list. They just do the next run. That is why a pattern like this can build in the background without really changing people's behavior until somebody lays it out plainly. And once it is laid out plainly, one detail makes it hit a lot harder than a generic food alert ever would. The products involved were far too ordinary to write off as someone else's problem. The ordinary food problem. If this were a story about obscure specialist products, the whole thing would feel smaller. People would hear the names, shrug, and assume it belonged to a different type of shopper. But that is not how this landed. The products were ordinary enough to disappear into routine, and that is exactly why the pattern bites. Potatoes, steaks, custard tarts, chocolate, ice cream, party food. Say that list slowly and it sounds like half a normal week. A quick side with dinner. A meat option when you do not have time to think too hard. A cheap dessert, a sweet treat. Something cold in the freezer. Something festive when you are buying too much too quickly and hoping most of it sorts itself out. That list sounds familiar, which is the part that should bother people. Nothing on it screams high-risk product. Nothing on it tells the shopper to go into serious checking mode. These are not foods people approach with suspicion. They are filler foods, everyday foods, the easy bits, the things you grab because they feel too normal to become the issue. That is what turns the recalls from a dry technical story into something much more domestic. This is not about somebody's exotic taste. It is about the plain stuff people buy on autopilot. That is what makes the whole Aldi angle work. Cheap shopping runs on speed. It runs on rhythm. You go in knowing roughly what the place is good for, you move through familiar categories, and you let ordinary-looking products pass with ordinary levels of attention. That is the unwritten deal. Lower prices, less hassle, faster decisions. The moment the most boring products in the trolley start becoming the ones attached to warnings, the whole deal looks less clean than it did before. It is one thing to say a supermarket had recalls. It is another thing to realise the recalls kept touching the kind of items people buy while half thinking about dinner, the weather, and whether the milk at home is already open. That is why the list matters. It matters because it tells you where the weakness showed up. It showed up in the routine, and routine is where trust. Nobody gets caught out by the product they already distrust. People get caught out by the one that seems too obvious to question. A tray of baby potatoes with butter sounds boring enough to feel safe. Thin-cut steak sounds straightforward enough to feel safe. Custard tarts sound like the sort of thing that would never need a second look. Chocolate sounds simple. Ice cream sounds simple. Party food sounds simple. That is the sting in this story. The alerts were attached to foods that borrow safety from their own ordinariness. That is also why simply saying recalls happen everywhere does not finish the conversation. Of course they do. But everywhere is not the point. The point is how these particular foods fit the way people use this particular shop. Aldi is not where most people go to ponder. It is where they go to get things sorted. The ordinary food pattern matters because it collides directly with the ordinary shopping mindset. Once you see it like that, the whole atmosphere changes. The recall list stops sounding like a technical document and starts sounding like a map of normal household decisions. A side, a dessert, a treat, a quick meat option, a festive tray. Bits and pieces. The sort of purchases that move through a house without anybody making a big deal out of them. That is why the pattern is more unsettling than it looks on paper. And in some homes it lands even harder. Lands not because they are more dramatic, because they have less margin for error in the first place. Where this hits hardest. At home, most people are not using Aldi as a quirky little side stop. They are using it because life is expensive and food shopping has turned into a weekly calculation nobody enjoys. That is what makes it central to so many homes. It feels reachable. It feels practical. It feels like a way of keeping the week moving without getting ripped to pieces by the big chains. The households leaning on that feeling are often the same households that feel product mistakes most sharply. Think about what a normal shop there really looks like. Someone has finished work, is tired, and needs to sort dinner fast. A parent is grabbing bits before another school day starts. Somebody is topping up because the full shop elsewhere still costs too much. A household is relying on freezer foods, desserts, easy proteins, own label basics, and whatever else gets them across the week without more stress than they already have. Now add allergies, intolerances, or celiac disease to that picture. In those homes, the label is not a background detail. It is the thing people are supposed to trust. It is the shortcut the whole system tells them to use. Read the packet, check the allergens, make the decision, get on with life. So when undeclared milk, undeclared egg, undeclared wheat or gluten, and peanut warnings start turning up across ordinary products, the damage goes beyond the recalled item. The shortcut itself gets weaker. That is exhausting in exactly the wrong way. The cheap, easy shop starts demanding extra mental work. The quick supermarket run becomes another thing that needs suspicion. A dessert that looked harmless now needs more attention. A side dish needs more attention. A cheap little treat needs more attention. That may sound minor on paper. In real life, it is a headache people were using Aldi to avoid. Money makes that worse. A wealthier household can absorb little retail failures with more ease because it has more room to do so. A tighter household feels every wasted purchase, every changed meal plan, every extra trip, every product that has to be binned, and every extra layer of checking. The lower the margin at home, the more annoying and disruptive a supermarket slip becomes. That is not melodrama. It is just how budgets work. There is also a time cost. A lot of these products are the exact products people buy when they do not have the energy for deep scrutiny. Quick sides, easy puddings, chocolate, ice cream, seasonal trays. These are not the foods bought in a calm, spacious moment. They are bought while life is already happening. The moment those categories become ones people feel they have to second guess, the shop loses part of the practical trust it depended on. That is why this topic should not be brushed aside as just a food safety story for policy people. It is much closer to everyday irritation than that. It lands in kitchens, in rushed weekday evenings, in homes that thought they had found the straightforward option, in routines already built around stretching time and money as far as they will go. Aldi became powerful because it seemed to remove friction from shopping. Last year's alert pattern suggests some of that friction was there, just hidden further back. And even that does not cover the whole picture, because the neat answer of just read better only works up to a point. There was another kind of warning in the mix, and it makes the whole thing less comfortable still. When reading carefully, still is not enough. There is a tidy version of this whole conversation that says the careful customer can protect themselves if they just stay switched on. Read the label. Double check the allergens, slow down. Fair enough. That helps with some problems. It does not help with all of them. Last year, a product sold at Aldi was also recalled over the possible presence of pieces of plastic. Chicken cooked meat trimmings. That one matters because it breaks the comfortable little idea that discipline in the aisle solves everything. A shopper cannot read their way around that. They cannot scan a packet and outsmart a piece of plastic. The problem is further back than the customer can see, long before the product is sitting in the fridge section waiting to be picked up. That changes the mood completely. Undeclared allergens already tell you the label cannot always be treated as a perfect guide. A contamination alert takes it one step further. It reminds people that the entire bargain depends on systems they never see. Suppliers, production lines, packaging checks, quality control, storage, notices, pulls, returns. A lower shelf price does not mean a simpler product chain. It only means the customer experiences the front end as simpler. That front end simplicity is one of Aldi's biggest strengths. The shop feels calm in a practical way. People are not overwhelmed with choice. They are not being sold a fantasy at every turn. The layout encourages pace. The price story encourages confidence. The whole thing says, relax. This is the sensible option. That is useful right up until a warning like that appears. Then the simplicity starts looking less like safety and more like a mood the customer had mistaken for safety. That is the real shift. The easy shop is not the same thing as the safe shop. The cheap shop is not automatically the low-risk shop. The place that feels least theatrical can still be carrying all the same hidden complications as anywhere else. In some ways, it can catch people out more easily because they arrive with less suspicion than they would somewhere flashier or more obviously manipulative. To keep this grounded, any major retailer can have contamination alerts. Modern food retail is messy and big. Mistakes happen, supply chains fail. Quality control is only as good as the systems holding it together. But that is exactly why Aldi deserves less automatic trust than many people have been giving it. The same real-world mess applies there too, even if the shopping experience feels cleaner, simpler, and more straightforward. That is why Aldi in 2026 should come with a different mindset, not panic. Not some dramatic boycott speech, a harder edge, a bit more suspicion, a refusal to treat it as the shop where attention can safely drop to zero. Because once you have both undeclared allergen alerts and contamination risk turning up around ordinary food, the old comforting line of "I will just read carefully and be fine" starts looking a lot weaker than people want it to. And once that line weakens, the meaning of cheap changes a bit as well, not on the receipt. In the head, what Aldi means. In 2026, Aldi is still useful. It is still cheaper than plenty of the competition. It is still the place many people go when they want the week to cost less. Pretending that is not true would weaken the whole argument because the low price side of Aldi's appeal is real. Cheap can do that to people. It can make them feel they have already won before the product is even in the bag. They see the lower total, the plain shelves, the fewer choices, the no-nonsense feel, and they let all of that do too much of the thinking. The trolley starts running on atmosphere. A product seems safer because the shop feels more grounded. A packet seems more trustworthy because the store seems less fake. The whole thing begins borrowing confidence from its own image. That is how Aldi became the shop people stop questioning. And that is why the warning in this title fits more than some people will like. Not because every product in Aldi is bad. Not because nobody should ever go back. Not because one chain is uniquely rotten while everyone else is somehow pure. None of that is needed. The stronger point is simpler and harder to shake off. Aldi has become the place too many people use with their guard down. Last year gave enough reason to stop doing that. Use Aldi for the prices if the prices help. Use it for the quick top-up if that is what gets you through the week. Use it for the basics if that is what your budget needs. But do not use Aldi in 2026 like it is your no-risk autopilot shop. Do not assume the ordinary products are too ordinary to become the issue. Do not let the cheap, practical image do all the trust work for you. The warnings were not attached to glamorous problem products. They were attached to the kind of foods people buy casually, the kind of foods people treat as harmless background items. That is why Aldi looks different once you know the pattern. It is not dangerous because it is cheap. It is dangerous to shop there half asleep because the things that make it feel sensible also make it easier to relax too early. And once that happens, the lower price stops being the full story. If this changed the way you think about an Aldi run in 2026, say so in the comments. Like the video, subscribe, and check out our next video. Because the real problem is rarely one item on one shelf. It is the habit built around it. And Aldi is exactly the kind of place where that habit can catch people out.